Welcome to the next video in our series about digital emergency response planning. In a previous video, we covered off when to start an incident team. Today, we'll be covering what communication channels to use in contacting people now that a disaster or crisis has been declared. The priority and context of this process is to gather and assemble the team of people responsible for responding and ensuring the organisation resumes operations as quickly as possible. There are several common techniques for making the first contact with the incident response team. Each have their strengths and weaknesses. My recommendation when developing up the initial communications channels is to have several utilising different transport mechanisms and a priority to each for failover or fallback. The context in which we're working within, things go wrong. In fact, typically many things go wrong, and all at the most inconvenient times. Thus, creating and building both adaptability and non-flexibility into initiating of a response team is an imperative. I have been involved in too many events or exercises in which a critical person is missing from the initial briefing because A, their technology was not enabled, B, there was no failover capability or capacity for the team, C, the communications channel was indirectly affected as well. Having communication channels in the following quadrants greatly assist in the startup and initiation of the crisis response team. Let me briefly explain the table for you. The rows of the table are the two main types of word-based communications, that is, text or written words, and sound-based in the form of video or voice. The columns of the table divide up the technologies by medium type. The most robust situation is to have all your staff with all communication channels. This, however, is not practical and is most certainly cost prohibitive. So, what might be a useful way in which to decide which technology to use in each of the boxes? I would suggest to consider first what technologies are the team familiar with. If you utilize Microsoft Teams, create a private team for crisis management. If your team is much more familiar or you have already implemented WebEx, use that and augment any deficiencies with another product. Also, look for solutions which can run in dual use or dual purpose. For example, your organization may choose not to purchase a dedicated critical event management platform. Rather, they will second the marketing department's bulk SMS account. What is important is to ensure that you have at least one type of text-based technology that can be used in band, a different technology that can be used out of band, and the equivalent for voice or video. For those who have not come across in or out of band, I'm referring to the normal situation of the internet and networks being available, thus in band. And out of band being technologies or communication methods which do not use wired networks or the internet. For the eagle-eyed, you'll also see that couriers and postage are included as a text-based communications method. Now, using couriers may not be the primary method of initiating a crisis team, but in the event of a major electrical disruption, such as a Carrington-level solar flare event or major floods, a guy on a bike or a boat may be the only forms of communication. Now, you may ask why Facebook and Twitter and other social media technologies are not included in the communications channels. Put simply, I'd advise against utilizing technologies which are not company-owned for crisis management. Firstly, not all staff have an account. Secondly, not all staff are comfortable to connect with their managers. That is, they'd like to keep their private life private. As well as there's less control over the medium, both for confidentiality and revoking access to the company information. Having said that, if Twitter messages are the only way that you can communicate with your staff member in a crisis, then use that channel. An interesting trend lately is to consolidate communication to mobile phones. We see more and more applications being supported on mobiles. This is fantastic for ease of use, but totally useless if you cannot charge or turn on your phone. A single failure here takes out the majority of communications all at once. Thus, An important practice when initiating a crisis or response team is to broadcast or communicate on multiple channels simultaneously. That is, send a group Microsoft Teams chat, an SMS, an email, and then, if you haven't heard, call their landline. That is, send a group Microsoft Teams chat, an SMS, and an email, and then, if you haven't heard from them, call their landline. Your hope is for one of the channels to get through. There are several techniques you can use to automate some of these contact channels, and we will cover them off in a future video. Now, once the team have been contacted, the group can go through the process of determining what technology to continue communications on. Running an emergency response team via SMS is quite a challenge. Migrating to a voice or video conferencing system will greatly assist the team. As a critical factor for the team being contacted, it is the fact that they need the technology enabled. And by enabled, I mean that it is installed and configured on their computer or on their phone, and the staff member knows how to use the application. So don't forget to train your staff in the applications you want them to use in an emergency, and do it to a level of minimum proficiency. The last thing you want is for a staff member to experience additional stress trying to learn and utilize new pieces of technology in a crisis. In summary, build a plan and capability to contact your emergency response team is important. Ensure that the plan has 1. Mechanisms which are both text and voice based. 2. These channels have multiple communications channels, that is, both in-band and out-of-band pathways. 3. You have an established failover protocol for the communication methods. And lastly, and most importantly, train and practice with your staff on calling the team together. Consider in your training plan, especially if the team is new, the discipline of emergency response startup training sessions. One organisation I used to work with, they started to time how long it took them to be ready for the situational briefing. That is, the team leader telling everyone what information he has for the disaster. Our very first practice took over an hour for everyone to connect. Even then, the IT support was still working with a couple of the directors fixing issues. Through some great work by the service desk, the team was able to stand up within 15 minutes. This included having half the team remotely dialing in. In the next video, we'll look at some of the common mistakes when initiating crisis or emergency response teams and what you might be able to do to avoid them. Until then, I look forward to discussing this video's topics with you further in the comments.